All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to How to Keep Your Kids Safer Online Using the Talk. I'm Amy Lang, and we're going to spend probably an hour, a little bit more than an hour, talking about this very topic. So I'm going to change and share my screen with you all. See what's happening there. Oh, hang on. I have to do one thing. Don't go anywhere. I have to get to the beginning. There we go. No, it's not the beginning. Sorry. Sorry, people who are watching the recording. Okay, there we go. Done that. Sharing the screen. Okay, there we go. All right, here we are, officially official. Anyway, thank you so much. We're gonna, like I said, we're gonna be about an hour 15 today, and I'm hoping that you enjoy this. And just to let you know, if you need to bail at some point, I am gonna send the recording, so you'll get the recording and all the resources I share as we go along. So let's get started, shall we? Oh, captions. Okay, I want to start with a story. So I had a couple come into my office for a consultation, and they were worried because their 7 or 8-year-old daughter had Googled horses and managed to make her way into porn. And obviously they were worried about this, and they were really surprised because it never had occurred to them that Googling something as harmless as horses could end up with their daughter end up in Pornlandia. They were funny, and they said the good news was that it was bad 70s porn. So we talked about how to handle that and what to do for her and what to do in the future. And then the minute they left, I was like, okay, how do you get from horses to porn? And so, of course, I Googled horses, and then I went to images. And then as I scrolled down, there was a horse with an erect penis. If you've never seen a horse with an erect penis, you cannot unsee things. Anyway, so I click on that, and then it was within a couple clicks that I ended up seeing full-on porn. The reason I'm starting with this story is because this is happening all the time. It's happening innocently, and unfortunately it has become a part of childhood, and it's also become a part of parenting that I think most of us never ever could have anticipated this being something we have to talk with our kids about. I mean, like the sex talk is enough, but now we get to add this exciting and kind of awful thing to another thing that we need to really kind of help our kids navigate. So I don't want to terrify you, but just want to be real about what's happening today. So for those of you who don't know me, I just want to tell you a little bit about myself and how I got started doing this work. So that's my spouse, Carrie, and our kiddo, Milo. And I have been a sexuality educator for over, 20, 25 years. I got my start doing pregnancy counseling, abortion, birth control counseling. Totally loved it. It was my hobby. And I had just assumed that when I had a kid, I would be amazing at the sex talks, and I was not amazing. I thought Milo was going to tell me it felt good to touch his penis, and I was like, oh no, please don't tell me that, in my head. And we had a little chat. He just said, I can see the veins in there where the blood goes, and I was like, excellent, just get in the bathtub. And that was when I realized I would rather talk to a pregnant 15-year-old than my sweet little 5-year-old about his penis. So I started doing some, research. And as I was doing that research, I realized that I could combine my two favorite things, talking about sex and teaching about sexuality. And I also have a master's degree, and my focus was adult education. So I could also teach adults. And so here we are. Birds and Bees and Kids was born, and that was 15 years ago. Milo, as you can imagine, was pretty much mortified to have a mother who's a sex educator, but he ultimately recovered from that. And now I think he thinks it's kind of cool. So that is my story. A couple other things. I just want to acknowledge that I am a white cisgender woman. I use she, her pronouns. I'm American, I'm secular, I'm liberal. I am Did I say I was married to a man? Married to a man. I'm educated, and I realize that all of this a whole lot of these things will show up in my work and as I'm speaking today. And I just want to assure you that I work really hard to be aware of my own values, and also that I completely respect and appreciate everyone else's values. Values are fundamental to having this conversation. And if you don't have a clear sense of your values around sexuality, it just makes the conversations a little more challenging. The other thing I want to speak to is that I am sex positive, and that means that I see sexuality as a wonderful, positive, healthy part of life. I also embrace all sexual identities and genders. And so as I'm teaching today, you may hear me, I may use he pronouns. I may say people with penises, people with vulvas. Our language is evolving, and I just want to acknowledge that. I'm evolving too. So let me see if there's anything else. I think that's it. So let's do this, shall we? Talk about what I'm going to be talking about. So we're going to look a little bit at what's going on in terms of kids' online time and online life. I'm going to go over some Sex Talks basics to help you get the party started, or maybe to encourage you to get it going again. I'll talk about some very simple things you can do to keep them safer. Several of them you can put to work like right away. And I'll talk a bit about how you can learn more from me, and then we'll have a formal Q&A. I'll stop in the middle to take some questions. So if you have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. And then one other thing, I just want to acknowledge as well that this can be triggering and challenging conversation and challenging learning. So please take care of yourself. If something comes up that you need particular help with, or you're really concerned about, just send me an email. I will get back to you within a day or two. So that's my job, is I'm here to support you. I'm here to support you. All righty. Here we go. So as we go along, we will be seeing these beautiful slides of nature, and that is your cue to breathe. So every time you see one of these, we're going to breathe. Ready? Here we go. Do one more. Thank you. Well done. All right. So this will help you learn more, because the thinky part of your brain will come back online. Alrighty, so let's get to the beginning. So one of the things I believe that has gone sideways in sexuality education is that we have been hyper focused on prevention. And what we need to be focused on is preparation. So prevention is all that talk about, like all those things about don't get pregnant, how to know if you're ready for the first time, all these, we talk about all this stuff like it is something we need to prevent from happening. So it's sort of a negative way of looking at it. And what we really need to be thinking about is, how do we prepare our kids for this important and fabulous part of life? How do we prepare them? And prevention is part of that preparation. So what we're going to be talking about today is, frankly, how to prepare them for when they eventually see something yucky online. And so they're gonna see porn. It is gonna happen, and I don't like it, and I'm assuming y'all don't like it, but it is something that we have to prepare our kids for. And like I said, there's prevention in there too, which is what some of the tips I have for you are preventative or prevention. So are preventative. All right, I'm moving along. Okay, so I just want to talk a little bit about what's going on. So here's the first thing. I just have some rhetorical questions for you. So would you let your preschooler just wander around the grocery store while you were shopping? I'm guessing no. Would you let your, 8, 9, 10-ish-year-old just take a bus downtown? For those of you who live in a city, would you let them take the bus downtown? Would you let your kiddo just, hop on by themselves on any kind of public transportation without any, support or rules? I'm going to go for no. Would you let your middle schooler go on a road trip with a high school kid? No, I'm hoping. Please don't say yes, but no. And then the last one is this, would you let your, sophomore in high school just hop on a plane and head to Paris on their own? Obviously, the answer to that is no, because no one gets to go to Paris without you, right? That's just unfair. That's just unfair. But you see my point, right? We don't let our kids go off and do these things until they have some knowledge and skills and understand how to stay safe when they're out in the world. And so what I want you to take home from this little demonstration is this: the internet is a place. We go online. It's the world wide web, right? It's a place. The language we use to talk about it is as if it is a place that we go, right? We go online. And just like you wouldn't let your 8, 9, 10-year-old get on a bus and go downtown without having conversations with them about how to be safe, how to like even get on the bus, what to watch out for, how to get off the bus, how to catch the bus, all of that without that preparation. We need to think about the internet in the same way. It is a place. And it is a place where there is opportunity for pretty much anything to happen. Anything to happen. So that's the first thing. We need to reframe how we think about the internet. It's not a thing, it's a place. So the next thing I would like to say is that I'm really like, my concern as a sexuality educator is your kids' porn exposure, or the P word. People tend to like leave the room sort of emotionally, mentally when I start talking about porn. So if you already did that, feel free to come back. But for me, porn exposure is the thing that is one of the, probably in a lot of ways, it's one of the most problematic things that happens on the internet. And it's something that is the most, that happens in terms of yucky stuff, the most readily. There's lots of awful stuff out there, but for me, this is the place that we need to hang around and figure out what to do about it. Oh, look, aren't I nice? Here's some nature. Let's take a breath. Oh, and I neglected to say I use notes, otherwise we'll be here all day. So the next thing I think that's good to do is to think about this. What are the devices your kids can use to get online? So what are the devices? And I would love it if you would just pop that in the chat and let me know. We're going to make a list. What are the devices your kids use to get online? So one of the obvious ones is on a phone, right? Yeah, iPod. And I'm going to actually keep track as you go. So we've got iPad, computer, Kindle Fire, phone, laptop, Xbox, Chromebook. Yeah, I feel like the Chromebook should get double. Computer, iPad, watch, Oculus Quest. I don't even know what that is. It's going to get its own line. It's a game. So yeah, they can get on a watch. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. You're hitting all of them. VR, yep, VR. Alexa, right? You can get to the interwebs from Alexa, is that correct? So we are at, well, I'm just going to say we're at like 10, 11. So there are multiple devices our kids, smart TV, yeah, PlayStation, right, thank you. There are multiple devices kids can use to get online. And so that is a lot to track depending on what's going on in your family. So here's my next question. Where are they getting online? What locations are they getting online? So obviously at home, but where else are they getting online? Where else can they go and get online? Home only, at school, friends' houses, school. Oh, pretend like they could go out in the world. Aftercare program, grandparents, remote learning computer, library, any place with Wi-Fi. Bing, 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 Susan. All right, any place, friend's house. Yeah, so they can pretty much get online anywhere and everywhere if there's Wi-Fi or if their phone is able to get the cellular whatsits. So they can get online anywhere and everywhere. So I think, when I'm tallying this up, they can go anywhere. They can get online anywhere and everywhere. And then they may have, they have 11, 12 different ways they can get online. Again, not every kid. I would guess that kids right now, depending on your household structure, probably have at least 3 places they can get online, or the devices they can use to get online. So the reason I am talking about this is because I just want it to be really clear to you that it is just the opportunity for them to be exposed to porn and whatnot is high. It's really high because there's so much opportunity. All right, let's take a breath. Breath. Here we go. Thank you. So the next thing I want to talk about is talking about it. So what we know about, here, I'm going to go back to the butterfly because she's friendlier. So one of the things we know about porn exposure in children is that the more information they have about sexuality, love, relationships, what's healthy, how things work, what goes where, all of those things around sexuality, the least, the porn impact is much less. It's lessened because they already have information about it. And so that's the first reason to talk with kids about sexuality, especially when it comes to exposure, because it reduces their curiosity if they already know what it is. They also are more likely to come to you if they see it and they know what it is. And well, if they know what porn is, or they know they see something sexual or naked bodies or something like that, they're going to trust you if something happens, and they're going to be more likely to talk to you because you've been talking openly about bodies and sexuality and that sort of thing. It also sets you up as the expert. You want to be their go-to source, even though you might not want to be, I guess you need to be their go-to source. Again, that's because we want them to feel comfortable and confident coming to you if something uncomfortable happens, not online, right? In that department, not online, because there's a whole lot of crappy stuff that happens out in the real world. So one of the things that happened, so, Milo was pretty mortified by me with, and us talking with him really openly about sexuality from a really young age. And so a whole lot of his peers hadn't had any kind of sex education at all until they got into 5th grade, when they did sex ed in elementary school. So it was spring of his 5th grade year, and they were starting the sex ed. And I was, of course, like, super curious to know how it was going, but I kept my poop in a group for a few days, and then we're walking home, and I said, "So, how's it going? What are you thinking?" And he's like, "Oh, Mama, you cannot imagine the questions those kids have." And I said, "Oh yeah, like what?" And he's like, "I'm not telling you," because that's how he is. And but I said, "Huh, did you know the answers?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he was all puffed up because he knew what these kids didn't know. He felt like one of the smartest kids in the classroom and in his class. And that was actually one of my goals for him, that he know this stuff and be confident and frankly be the smartest kid on the playground. So one of the things that's happening, that's where we get to these gals, that is happening and still happens, and now it's happening a little differently, is the kids talk on the playground. So one of Milo's, one of his friends' moms called me one day, and she's like, "Amy, we have a thing." And I said, "What's happening?" And she said that that last night, the night before she called me, that Olivia, when they were watching TV after dinner, she was 7, stood in front of the television and just announced, "I know what sex is." And they said, "Oh, really? What do you think it is?" And she said, "It's when you kiss with tongues." And then they were great. And they were like, "Oh, where'd you hear that?" And she said, "From 4th grade girl on the playground." So kids are talking, they're doing that. And y'all may remember that from when you were a kid, the rumor mill. Peers are not often accurate. And so rumors get spread around. And now what's happening with older kids who have phones, they're sharing stuff on their phones pretty readily. And it is not sex is when you kiss with tongues. It is a very different caliber of information. So yet another reason to be talking with them, because you want them to say, "So-and-so showed me this on their phone," or "So-and-so said this thing to me today. I don't understand it. Is this what this is?" And to be comfortable asking you clarifying questions or telling you if something's going on. The idea is that you are prepared, when you're open with them, you're preparing your kids for having these conversations so that they feel ready, when they feel confident when the topics come up just amongst their peers and in their life, so that they are prepared for when they see something sexual online. So remember, this is about preparation. You want them to know what to do, to be ready for it, to understand that it's going to happen, just like they're eventually probably most likely going to do sexual stuff with someone. same thing, like we want them prepared and ready for that. And Lord knows, most of us were not prepared. Maybe you were prepared. It's not really. So here's one of my firm beliefs. I believe that that saying knowledge is knowledge is powerful. It's actually knowledge is empowering. So if you're informed, you're empowered. So having information is empowering, and that goes both ways for your kids about this part of life and for you about this part of life and how to talk with your kids about it. So if you're informed, you feel better. You're like Milo, you're puffed up, and you'll be more empowered to talk with your kids. You'll feel more confident, more comfortable. And the same for them. They'll follow that lead. They're empowered, they're informed, they're empowered. And even though this is uncomfortable for most of us, it's so important because sexuality and relationships, as you know, are a fundamental core part of life from the very beginning until we croak. So when we're looking at the idea of preparation versus prevention, just want to think about it in terms of what do they need to be prepared for? Like, for example, when it comes to puberty, what do they need to be prepared for? And then what do they need to be prepared for when they're starting those first relationships? What do they need to be prepared for when it comes to consent? So we need to have them ready to have these things happen, so they're ready, so they're prepared for it. And, kids are learning about all kinds of different things, and which is important. But the most important thing is that they know that if they, excuse me, pause. Most important thing is that they see you as that person to talk to. And this can be super uncomfortable. I have a really good story a little later about super uncomfortable, but also being prepared, right? Being prepared. Okay, so let's do this. So one of the ways that you can empower yourself to have better conversations with your kids, especially than maybe your parents did or whoever raised you, is to spend a little time thinking and talking about what you remember when you were a kid, how you learned about sexuality and relationships. So I'm actually going to pop you into breakout rooms. You can unpop yourself in just a minute. I'm going to give you about 3 or 4 minutes, I think, to talk about this. How many of you are there? There are like 43 of you. I'm terrible at the math. I'll do 16. So you're going to pop into a breakout room. You're not going to know your people, or maybe you will. Surprise, surprise. Maybe all of Ohio will end up in the same place. And I'd like you to talk a little, just introduce yourself, say how old your kids are, and then chat about what were some of your sources of information. And also, this is really key, what were the messages you got about sexuality? And this isn't an opportunity for you to share anything that was particularly traumatic or upsetting from your background. Trust me, there is a crap ton of stuff to talk about. So here, I'm going to put you in the rooms. There you go. And again, you can move yourselves out and you'll get a little warning when it's time to stop. And I am going to pause the recording again. Sorry. Anyway, school's not enough, and you were all wondering, I'm sure, when to get this conversation started. So again, like you needed a trustworthy adult. I needed a trustworthy adult to really help you prepare, right? To prepare for this part of life. So you have an opportunity to do that for your kids. So I'm just going to quickly go through like the best time to start the party, how to start the party, and some things you should cover by the time they're in middle school. And ideally you start the conversations when your kids are about 5. I realize this sounds really young, but in the Netherlands, where they do everything better than we do, basically, they have in their school system, kids have sexuality education. It's usually focused on body parts and bodies and consent and boundaries and that kind of thing, which is a part of sexuality, including pregnancy and birth and how that whole thing happens. They start at 5. And they do so much better. They have sexuality education all the way through school. And so when those kids graduate and are launched into the world, they're prepared. Like they know what's a coming. They know how to manage a whole lot of stuff because they're really, really well informed. So 5 sounds young. So if you think for a minute about 5-year-olds and 5-year-old life, there are some really good reasons to start earlier rather than later. The first is that they are just super curious. They don't know there's anything yucky, bad, embarrassing, or shameful about sexuality. So you get an opportunity to fill them up with a sex positive perspective. They don't really get uncomfortable because they don't know. Like when you say this is how butter's made and this is how baby's made for a 5, 6, 7-year-old, it's like the same thing. It's like, oh, okay, whatever. And then as they get older, well, the other reason to talk to them sooner rather than later, like up until 8, they're like they're not going to notice your sweaty upper lip and your 2 glasses of wine as you're reading a book with them, right? They're not going to pick up on your anxiety in the same way that a 10, 11, 12-year-old will. So sooner is better, easier on you, easier on them. My goal for Milo was that he just never have a memory of that he had always known about sexuality, like always known about how babies are made, all the ways, by the way. And different kinds of families and all that stuff. That was one of my goals for him. And I'm happy to say, I think we achieved it. So then so if you're thinking, oh crap, I'm late to the game, you just have more to cover in a shorter amount of time. You might get a little more pushback if you're starting with a 10, 11, 12-year-old, especially somebody that's into puberty. They are not down with this often, but sometimes they are. Every kid is different. So if you're coming to this a little later, then what I would highly recommend you do is just say, I'm sorry, we should have started talking about this sooner. I didn't think you were ready. I didn't think I was ready, but here we go. It might be uncomfortable. It's probably going to be funny because sex is funny. But I want you to be really confident and comfortable with this part of life because it's going to be with you the whole time you're alive. And then jump in. And then I strongly recommend books, some specific books. When we're done, you're going to get an email with a recording and also a list of different resources. So just be here now. Just be here now. So starting sooner is better. It's easier on everyone. And so everything, this is what they should know by the time they start middle school. Here's what I mean by everything. I mean the basics of just pretty much everything related to sexuality. So different kinds of families, different sexual identities, pregnancy, puberty, birth, all the different ways you can have sex. 3 main ways. Their last names are sex. Talking about consent and healthy relationships. Now, you don't need to be the Kama Sutra for your budding young middle schooler, for your 5th grader, because that is not appropriate. They will figure out how to have sex. Although, side note, I just had a mom email me because her son, she explained, the usual way babies are made. And he said, oh, you did that twice? And she's like, yeah, we did, to make you and your brother. And then he said, well, how am I going to know how to do that? Are you going to show me how to do that? And she's like, no, it's something you figure out on your own. And he's like, you need to show me because I am not going to be able to figure that out on my own. Anyway, sorry, side note, I thought that was really funny. So yeah, you're not the Kama Sutra. So you just need to make sure that they have a good understanding of all these different things, which is another benefit of starting sooner rather than later. Because you have more time to fill them up with these little bits of details. And the reason it's everything by then is because when kids get into middle school, all bets are off. They talk about everything. They share all kinds of stuff. They have access. Most children actually can go anywhere they want on the internet because people aren't paying attention. So this is, again, prevention, right? We want them to, and preparation. We want them to be prepared for this. This is what prepares them for this stuff happening. All right, so everything. I think we're going to get to breathe here. That's just my guess. It is. Let's take a breath. All right, let me see if I've forgotten anything. So I have an online solution center, which some of you may already know about. And part of that, which I'll talk about it a little bit more, but part of what's in there is what by when, what your kids need to know at each age and stage. This is something that will really help you know what's too much information. And then the other thing, I am going to give you one resource right now. Stay here with me and focus. It's a book called It's Perfectly Normal, and it covers everything. It's for kids who are 10 and older, or for you if you're rusty. It's terrific, sex positive, great illustrations. Roby Harris, who wrote it, her language is practically perfect in every way. So that is one thing that I highly, highly recommend. You'll feel more confident and empowered because you'll kind of have a grip on what I mean by everything. Okay, so let me see. So there is a direct line between being well informed about sexuality and reduced curiosity, because when you're talking with your kids openly, they're going to be less likely to go Google stuff because you're going to give them some good resources, books, ideally. There are kids safe videos and websites, which I will send those to you for them to go look at. So they'll know where to go that's safe, and they will know what to do if they see something that's adult-like content. So there is a through line through this. We know that from lots of data and research looking at kids who end up getting involved in pornography in an unhealthy way. And, honestly, for a lot of us, I think, Playboy and Penthouse and it's crazy, right? Magazines where I got a lot of my information that was pornographic. It's very different than what's happening today. They're like, you can't even compare the two. You can't even compare the two. Alrighty, so ready to talk about some ways to keep them safer other than the sex talking? Here we go. So this is the first thing. Oh, let's take another breath. Thank you. This is the first thing you need to do. So when it comes to keeping your kids safer online, I am pretty sure, now some of you may have already done this and you are beautifully off the hook. Others of you may have not already done this, or you just need to amp it up. I guess that's what I need to say. So the first thing you need to do is apologize and say to your kids, you know what, I'm sorry. We should have been talking about keeping you safer online. I'm sorry, we should have had monitoring and parental controls installed. This has put you at risk for seeing crappy stuff because it is not their job to know how to wander around the grocery store on their own, right? That's not something they just intuitively pick up, just like it's not their job to make good, safe decisions online without any guardrails. Actually, a better analogy is the car seat, is getting in the car, right? We don't get in a car without a seatbelt ever, right? We don't. So the internet's the same way. We need to put the seatbelt on. And if you haven't put the seatbelt on, you need to apologize for not insisting and then change things up and then change things up. So here's some things you can do. Okay, so some of this is obviously we're going to, when we can be together again. Some of this is directed at that, but most of it you can use for now. So before, I would recommend that your child have 2 devices that they can access the internet on. Now I'm like at 3 or 4 because we've got the damn school computer to consider, but they are pretty well locked down. You just need to double check that everything is functioning as it should, because sometimes the protective business can fall off. Oh, did I mention I'm not a tech person? Anyway, so 2 devices and then 2 hours of free time. So right now that's different, right? Like kids, the only place they can connect with their pals is online. So being creative about how they're connecting, especially the younger they are, simultaneous playing Legos, simultaneously playing Uno, stuff like that. You need to have hours in place because it helps everyone feel more in control. We're out of control right now on multiple levels. So having a structure makes hi 1984, having a structure makes people feel better, especially you. So if you say we get 3 hours of entertainment time and that's it, and you're ready to put up with the pushback, good. So minimal devices, probably 3 now, and find a minimal number of hours for entertainment. Have hanging out rules. So hanging out rules are things like if somebody comes over to play, no screens for 3 hours. If they're there longer than 3 hours, then you can do one thing, like watch a movie, play one game, one thing. And when kids get older, when they come to your house, same thing. You might have some rules about y'all need to do something else before you plug in. Gets harder as they get older, but kids really appreciate not being online. It's exhausting, as we all know now, right? We're all Zooming constantly, and it's like, God, make it stop. They're the same way, even though they would never tell you. So what are your rules for hanging out? Can kids get online? We'll talk about monitoring in just a minute. How is that going to look at your house? What's that going to look like, especially as kids get older? Refusal plan. So I don't know what else to call this, but this is a refusal plan on two fronts. The first refusal plan is what to do if they see something, like they Google horses and they end up in, Pornlandia. The refusal plan for this is what do they do when that happens? So it's pretty simple. If they see anything that makes them feel uncomfortable or seems like grown-up stuff, the rule is, and this is a great thing to say to kids who are 11 and 12 and under, the rule is that you turn off the device, you stop watching, you shut the laptop, and you come and find me or Safe Adult, and tell us. You won't be in trouble. This is super important because it keeps your connection to the child. You won't be in trouble. We just need to make sure that you're okay and that what you saw, like you're feeling okay about what you saw, and that we make sure it won't happen again. So this is where you're taking responsibility. And if you don't have monitoring and parental controls and your child gets into something that is not so good, it is not their fault. They don't have impulse control. They don't have self-control. They're not 25, they're 15, they're 12, they're 5, right? That's an unrealistic expectation. So just assume they're not going to be able to, they're not going to follow the rules, and partially because shit happens accidentally. The other refusal plan is what to do if somebody shows them some explicit content. So one of my good friends, her daughters are 4 years apart in age, and the first week of middle school for both girls, on the school bus, someone showed Arden porn on their phone and someone showed Alex porn on their phone. So the girls already knew about sex, already knew what to do. They had a refusal plan in place. And one of the things that, I don't know which one of them said was like, dude, I think looking at porn is a solo activity, and shamed him. Also, they can say things like, what the hell, and walk away. This is harder to do, but if they've practiced, then it actually works. Another thing to do is to have your kids have a couple of websites or videos like queued up so they can take their phone and say, oh, hey, have you seen this? And load it up and show them the funny thing. So just redirect that kid's behavior. This is stuff that you should talk about and practice with your kids. It needs to be somewhat second nature for them. The next thing, turn it all off. Just turn it all off. Find a time in your weekend, maybe Sunday afternoon, or maybe Thursday nights, or maybe Wednesday night, because it's hump day. You don't do anything that involves a screen. That includes you, unless you have work urgency, which I know your work schedules are bonkers. But if you can just turn it all off and have no screens, no phone checking, nothing, it will give everybody a place to recharge and calm down. Now, I recommended this before, but now especially. This last little one, your own self-control. What are you doing? What are you doing? How much are you on your phone? How important is your phone? Is it something that is a constant companion that you're doom scrolling, you're constantly on and side-eyeing everything else that's going around you? Really mind your phone manners. Put it down. If you're making your phone your priority, then sorry, did I mention I'm judgmental? That if you're making your phone your priority without good reason, then you're telling your kids that that's what's important, right? The kids are watching us way more than they are listening to us. So how are you handling your own phone screen behavior? And give yourself some parameters and talk about it and say, you know what, I'm not going to look at my phone for the next hour unless it's so-and-so's ding dong, right? Ringy ding. It may pick up, but may not, because remember, some of you may remember before when we didn't have phones all the time and how we all managed to function. Just saying. Okay, next up. Okay, so these are the things that are, I think, the most important. You must have parental controls and monitoring installed on every single device your child has access to the internet on. I hope to God you are not a family that has 11 different devices your child can actually access the internet on. Parental controls and monitoring are two different things. Parental controls block search terms. That's the controlling part. Monitoring watches where they're going. So, and again, I will email this to you. There is a product called Circle. It's great, and it is a thingy that hooks into your internet spewer outer that's on your wall. I should probably find out the real names for this. So it's hardware and then software. It's an app. You can control all kinds of things. You can just shut off the internet. You can turn things on, turn things off. It's terrific. The monitoring can be, the parental controls, you can have things really locked down with it. So they really can't go anywhere. As they get older, you're going to let out the leash. Just like as they get older, you're going to let them fly to Paris on their own when they know what to do. Still no. But all the time, so you let out the parental control leash so they can go anywhere they want, but you're monitoring, you're watching. So that's how you know they're making safe decisions. And also, if they are going out to porn and they're watching and they're trying to watch and they keep trying to watch, then you'll know that something's up and your kiddo might need some help. Is any of this perfect? Oh, hell no. Hell no. The next thing is to do phone and app check-in. So monitor their text, check in, have a conversation about like what apps are kids using, show me how they work, talk to them frequently and make sure they understand that their phone is not private property. Like you own the phone, you own the interwebs access, you're paying for their ability to use it. So you need to have some rules around that. I'm going to send you sorry, I have to add this to the thing. I'm going to send you a cell phone contract, which is really a phone contract, which is really helpful. I'll add it to the list of stuff, of resources. And then of course, the last thing is the sex talking. Got to turn it on, you got to turn it up, and you got to talk about it. And and you need to draw the line to porn. You need to say, like, sometimes there are videos of people having sex, on the internet. People like to look at that. It makes them feel good in a sexual way. I believe that it is absolutely not okay or safe for kids to look at that. It can be really scary and confusing. It's not real sex. And it's something, if you see it, you can tell me, you won't be in trouble. This is why we have monitoring and parental controls, so you're protected from seeing something like this. But again, if you see it, you won't be in trouble. You can tell me. And you need to really be clear about that. But the sex talks prepares them for that, right? So if they see it, they're like, oh, fuck, sorry, I swear a lot. Oh, hell, or oh no, that's porn. I shouldn't watch this. They'll be way more likely to stop watching and then tell you. So remember, we're seat belting, right? We're preparing them for this event inevitability, right? We're preparing them, and you can do some preventing things, and these are them. So I'm just going to encourage you to pick one thing to do to get this party started, these simple tips. Maybe it's just figuring out what day are we going to have the no screen time, or maybe it's, just waiting until you get an email from me with the resources and looking at some of the resources. I'm a big fan of having teeny tiny goals. So just one little thing. All right. Okay. Our time is good. You know what I'm going to do? Where are we with all this? Oh, I'll tell you two more things. So this is the goal, right? Like, we want our kids to see this stuff and be like, ugh, no, thank you. That's the goal. That's the goal. Yes, the chicken. I love this chicken picture for some weirdo reason, and I was so delighted to be able to use it. So when Milo was in the 7th grade, he was having an adolescent fit. Some of you know how this goes. So he's complaining about this and complaining about that. And then he said, and I hate Custodio, which was the monitoring and parental controls software-y stuff that we were using at the time. And I said, oh yeah, why? And he said, because I can only go to like 3 or 7, 5 websites because I know you're watching. And I said, oh yeah, that must be really hard. And he was like, it is, it sucks. And he went, storming off. And I ran downstairs and found my spouse. And I'm like, Carrie, Custodio is working. Because here's the deal. He could free range. By the time kids are in middle school, they should be allowed to go anywhere they want on the interwebs. We were watching. So he was flexing that muscle of self-control. He felt like he could not go anywhere because we were watching. And that's what we want, right? I was delighted to hear him say that because he knew he could go anywhere, but he was choosing not to. So that's my free range chicken story, my free range child story. So that is that's the goal, right? We want our kids to be able to understand what they're seeing and then say no to it. And then, that sort of thing. And also really be conscious of where they're going online and how that's showing up in their world and what that can do to them All right, I'm going to drink. Y'all want to stare at that lovely picture? Let's see if there's anything else. Okay, so let's do this. I want to get to your questions, and we're definitely going to do that in just a minute. Let's do this. Okay. So before we get to the Q&A, I just want to tell you at the top, remember I talked about how you can learn more from me. So it's that time. So I just wanted to take a few minutes and talk to you about my Solution Center. And this is the place to go if you want all the things to help you feel empowered and confident talking to your kids. So if you're thinking, I'm behind, or I'll pay you $15,000, Amy Lang, to do this for me, or if you want to just get started in a way that's sex positive and feels good to you and good to your kiddos, this is the place to go. Hey, Lynette, will you throw we put the URL in the chat so people can go and poke around. We forgot she was there, didn't we? So let's see. So let me just show you what's inside of it because it's easier. So there's a lot of different things in there, and I'll talk to you about them in a minute. But one of the main things is a video about what your kids need to know by when. It's age by age. This explains what everything means, because as you go through each year, each age group, you'll see where you need to land. It'll help you avoid giving them too much information, because you'll have some parameters rather than winging it and worrying like, oh no, I talked to my 11-year-old about oral sex. Is that too much? It's not. So it's what they need to know from birth until 4, from 5 until 8, and 9 to 12. And there's also a very robust handout that goes along with that. The other thing that I think is very germane to our conversation today is I have a webinar that I did with my colleague, Joe Langford. He is a therapist that works with boys who sexually offend and have porn problems. Shall we breathe? It's called Poison Porn, Your Kids in Porn. And we dig into the impact of pornography, more ideas for prevention, how specifically to talk with kids about it. And we look at different age groups of kids. So that same kind of birth to 4, we don't really talk to a birth-year-old about porn, but you little kids, elementary age kids, and older kids. It's one of my favorite classes to teach because I love Joe and we have a really good time together. And I think it's probably one of the best pieces of content in the Solution Center. Let's see. So here are the other things. So I teach you, so there's 3 sections that are just like to get you prepared to have the conversations. So my Magic Sex Talks formula, communication tips and scripts, how to make those conversations feel like natural and comfortable, and for this to become a regular part of your family life. I also have a section that's age appropriate, curated videos, books, and websites. So there are some kick-ass websites now for kids that have appropriate videos for them. And so I went through by 4 different age groups and curated them for you so that you don't have to guess, like, is this okay? It's okay. I already did the guessing for you. And then another class that's puberty prep for parents. You need to know what's going to happen to them before they are in puberty. I took a class on puberty when Milo was like 7, because I was just test driving a local gal. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so glad I know this now, because by the time he started puberty, I knew knew what to expect. I understood why he was going to be crazy town. I understood like the best times to communicate with him. So that's what the puberty prep is. There are a couple different videos on developmentally different kids. I have one on neurodivergent kids, on kids with, I think, ADD and ADHD. And then there's a whole section on sexual abuse prevention, which no one wants to talk about, but we have to. And I, like with everything else I do, I aim to make it simple, comfortable, and help you feel, again, more confident having the conversations. All right, let me see if there's anything else. Oh, and then this is new. I'm doing a hump day half hour. It's part of the Solution Center, and we're going to do a deep dive into one topic. It'll be 10 minutes of teaching and 20 minutes of chatting, either about what you just learned or whatever the hell else is going on. And the first one is on the 27th at 12:30 Pacific time, and we're going to be talking about sexual identities. So those of you with kids who are heading into middle school or in middle school, there is a lot of curiosity, experimentation with different sexual identities and genders. And of course, in our world, there are lots of different sexual identities and genders. So we'll be talking about that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I think that's it. Okay. So one quick story, and that is from, I think I referred to this earlier, like that awkward, awful conversation moment. So I had a mom email me and she said, okay, I'm feeling super proud because I handled one of the conversations I was not looking forward to at all. So she has two boys, 10 and 8, and they came home from school, ran upstairs, dumped their backpacks, and then her older boy, the 10-year-old, came right back downstairs. And she said, she was doing the dishes or something, and he came up to her and he said, hey, I've got a question. And she's like, sure, what? And he says, what's a BJ? And she's like, right? I mean, really. And he said, what's a BJ? And she said, oh, thanks for asking. What do you think it is? And he said, well, a sex thing? And she said, yeah, where did you hear about it? And he said, from some guys at school. And she's like, okay, great. Thanks for asking. Here it is. And so she explained what a BJ is. She talked about how you do it for pleasure, you can do it if you want to, don't have to do it, talked about the limits around it. And she said, yeah, any questions? And he said, nope, gross. And she said, yep, that's because you're a kid and sex isn't for kids. And he went on his merry way. And she said she felt like a total rock star, and that because she had been working with me and following my stuff over the, I think it was only a couple years, she really knew what to do and how to handle that situation. And I'm guessing that A, none of you really want to have that conversation with your kid, but B, when you need to, that you feel like she did, like she's got it all going on. And then I think after that, she was like, I can handle anything. All right. So here we go. Let's talk about the fee. It was $180 a year. It was a $15 a month subscription thing. And I just changed it it's $69. It's a one-time payment. And then if you use the code BBK Jan 21, so Birds, Bees, Kids, January 21, BBK Jan 21, you'll get 15% off. So it's like $58.75. So you need help, it's all here. I know you want your kids to grow up to be whole, healthy, happy adults. And this is one of the ways you can help yourself help them. Okay, I'm trying to think of it. That's it from that. So if you have any questions about the Solution Center, if something wasn't clear, or if you're wondering if there's something that's included in it, feel free to throw that in the chat. And let's turn it back to just, Q&A time. Oh, thanks, Lynette. Can you put the HTML thingy in there so they can click on it? So if you can, feel free to poke around in there. And there are 38 of you. Okay. What you got? Just regular questions. And I think let's do this. Can I switch you to gallery view? I like to see you all. It makes me happier. Oh my God, I'm just having so many issues with my Zooming. Never mind. It feels like it's too hard. Funny. Hang on one second. If you have questions, throw them in the chat while I'm trying to figure this out. I will stop trying to figure this out. Oh, goodness. What's happening? Okay. Any questions? concerns, clarifications? You can unmute yourself if you want. Oh, we got Richard. Script for what is porn for a 10-year-old. Excellent. Let's see. I'm gonna have a drink. And I'm drinking tea, by the way. So what I would say to a 10-year-old, we're just going to assume they know what sex is. We're going to assume they know that people have sex for pleasure. And then what I would say is, hey, I just wanted to talk to you about something. And I would ask, do you know what porn is? And they will say yes or no. And then you say, okay, if they say yes, then say, oh, tell me what you think it is. And they may be accurate. And so then you just need to do some deep breathing. And even if they say yes, then you still need to just say what it is again, because you want them to have your adult perspective. So what I would basically say is, so you know how people have sex because it feels really good to their grown-up bodies? Yes. So sometimes people will make videos of other people having sex and doing all kinds of different sexual things. It's called porn or pornography. People like to look at that because it makes them feel good in a sexual way, but it is absolutely not for kids. It's not for kids because sex isn't for kids, and it's not real sex. It's like cartoons. Like people's bodies don't look like that. Women's bodies don't look like that. Men's bodies don't look like that. When people are having sex, they generally don't look, act, etc. like that. And so the rule in our family is that if you see that, you need to stop looking and let me know. You won't be in trouble. And they may push a little bit around, like more around like, why would somebody want to see that? And it sounds super gross. And then just hang in there with them and explain that, yeah, everybody has different ideas about sexuality. As you get older, you're going to start to have sexual feelings. This is not a safe place for you to go to get those sexual feelings, and then keep talking about it. There's a book called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures that I'll send you the link to in the resources. That's really good for kids to learn about pornography. It talks about it really, really well. Yeah, Nathan and Tracy, there is, because I'm funny. I thought charging $69 was hilarious. Okay, thank you. I hope that helps. So, okay, Cooper, let's see. When a child asks a question about sex, what is a BJ? Is it okay to lead with a direct answer? I'm worried if I fish it for info, why he's asking, he'll turn away with a never mind. No, they won't. The reason you're asking is because it's quick, right? And you can just answer. You can just say, hey, thanks for asking, and answer. But if it's something that, like, this BJ thing kind of knocked her socks off, so it's buying time. So if you say, thanks for asking, where'd you hear that? What do you think it is? You're listening, but you're also like gathering yourself up so you can answer. The other thing is, it is absolutely okay to say, like she could have said, hey, thanks for asking me that. I really need to think about how I'm going to answer you because I want to make sure I get it right. So two things, please don't Google it because it is a sex thing. And I will get back to you, just by the end of the day. That's totally fine for you to do that. And then you have to get back to them by the time you said you'll get back to them, because you're going to decrease their trust in you if you just are like, whoops, never mind, forgot to explain what a BJ is. All right, let's see. Oh, you're all laughing about the 69 thing. I know, I just cracked myself up. Someone needs to crack me up. You guys, you all have me crying. Go back, you can do that. Okay, kids being influenced by behavior in videos. I can just unmute as it's too hard to write it all out. Oh yeah, Sheila, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead and ask.
Yeah. Hey, thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. I was just wondering, my daughter's 10 and she loves listening to music. And a lot of times, like, there's music videos that would accompany the music, whether it's Lady Gaga or whoever. And a lot of times, like, those videos are pretty, like, sexually explicit.
Yep.
And then I see her mimicking that kind of, those sorts of movements. And, like, I've been so torn because I don't want to, like,
Yeah.
make her ashamed. I want her to be able to, like, be in her body and feel good, because I know I was very ashamed and would never have danced like she does. But then at the same time, I don't want, like, I want to protect her as well, because right now she's completely oblivious to what that is. So yeah, thank you.
Great. Yeah, thank you. That's such a good question. So a couple things that I would do is I would say to her, like, the way they move their bodies, like, they are amazing athletes and dancers, but their way they're moving their bodies is really adult like and sexual. And so the problem is, and I'm not perfect at this, right, because I totally don't want to shame her either, but you also do not want your 10-year-old twerking, right, because it's sexual. So you could say, some of the things they do are really sexual, and it's really not okay for a girl that's 10 to be moving their body that way. So let's figure out how you can change the movement, or you might even just have a rule that she can do that when she's by herself, but because people might feel uncomfortable if they're moving her body that adult in that adult kind of grown up way, that maybe she just do that at home, or try to help her find some parameters. So it's a really tough one because there are really, really graphic music videos that would have been porn back in the day. Like, they are porn, they're super porny. The other thing too would be to try to explore some music that is maybe less explicit. So it's a tough one, and I totally understand we don't want to body shame, but then there is a point where, like, we don't want Uncle Creepy watching her dance like that, right? Because that's not okay. Because he's, I mean, sorry to throw Uncle Creepy under the bus, but, like, we don't want certain folks looking at our children in a sexualized way. But again, it's not her job to protect herself, right? It's your job to kind of sort this out. So I don't know how much help I'm being, but blech. Um, so just one other thing, I didn't say this about the talks about sexuality, is that it's actually protective. So I just did this class with my colleague, Christy Keating, who her company is Savvy Parents Safe Kids, and she was a prosecutor of sex crimes for years. And from interviewing those creepy asswipes, what she learned, and we know from interviewing them, is that they look for kids who do not have open communication with their parents or their caregivers about sexuality. They want them dumb because it's really easy to manipulate them. So if you're using correct names with your kiddos in terms of, like, their private body parts, that's a red flag to them. So if your kiddo says, "Mama, my penis itches," or your 12-year-old's like, "God, my vulva is driving me nuts," 12-year-old's not going to say that, but if they use the correct terms, that signals that someone's talking to them. So this is, again, protective. If you're saying, like, sex is not for kids, it's for later in life, it's not okay for you to do anything sexual with someone until you're older, for anyone to try to touch you in a sexual way, like, if you're clear about that and they know what you're talking about, they're safer from sexual abuse. And when I learned that just, I was worried about talking to Milo when he was so little at 5. When I learned that just pushed me over the edge, just pushed me right over the edge. And I'm like, I am all in, because I don't want that. Of course, I don't want that to happen to my child. So again, like, for you, like, getting empowered with the right information, that's one of the reasons I made the Solution Center, is because I can't be with you 24/7. You don't want me with you 24/7, but I wanted to have a place where you could go and get information that you needed, like, when you needed it. So yeah, so sorry, that got me off in the sexual abuse land. So that's no fun. Shall we breathe? Here we go. So other questions, and you can unmute yourself. I think you can duke it out. I can't figure out how to make you back to gallery view. It won't let me. So there we have it. We'll just have to live. Or type it in the chat. And if you're feeling shy, just type it to me privately. Oh, there was great. Thank you so much, Katie. Yeah, how to communicate with a co-parent, extended spouse about all this stuff. Yeah, definitely. So one thing I would do is I would, if they're not watching this with you, is I would say, "Hey, I watched this thing. It was really interesting." If you're evangelized, it's better to kind of keep it chill and just be, "It was really interesting. Do you want to," she's sending, we got getting the recording. You want to watch it together, and then watch it together. The other thing you can do is just say, "I watched this thing and I'm thinking about this. How do you want to do this? How do we want to handle this? Like, what do we want for our kiddos? What don't we want for our kiddos?" Like, doing that is a really great way to enter the conversation. Or even backing up the truck further, how did you learn about this? Like, where'd you get your information? What sources? What do we want for our kids? How are we going to do this? That's another way to go. And if you have a values clash, right? Like, if your partner is a no sex until you're married for usually religious reasons. And you're, let's make sure that when they do it, and I know they're going to do it before they get married, they're really prepared for it person. It's okay to hold those different values. And you can say, you know, I believe this and your other parent believes that. What do you believe? And, you know, for me, preparation always trumps like high ideals. Everybody has sex before they get married, like tiny portion of the population. So they need to be ready, right? Like, so, and that sometimes that just doesn't work. So you got to figure out how you're going to talk about it. Let's see. So somebody had a question about like 5-year-olds. Hey, Lynette, will you scroll back in the questions? There was something, what is it? I can't remember. Will you scroll back through those? I'm just going to answer this one, and you can unmute yourself and tell me. What age group? Oh, sex is not for kids too, if you're going to choose to do it. Probably around 8, 9, 10, 11, because sex is on the table, like boyfriend, girlfriending, you know, relationshiping is starting to happen. So you can say, you know, sex is not for kids. You could say this sooner, actually. You know, sex is not for kids, but later when you decide to do it, you know, when you're ready to do it, we'll talk a lot about that. So you're really ready. You know, there are ways to not, if you're having, you know, if you're going to be having a relationship with someone who's the opposite gender, you know, we'll talk about that. We'll to make sure you're really ready. We'll talk about agreeing and all that. So just like it's painting the picture, like in the future. So yeah, I think that's what I would do. So you can kind of do them both at once. Sex is not for kids, but when you're ready later on, when you're in your early 30s, blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, hey, Lynette. Okay. Is there a risk little kids 5 years old would try to experiment if they know about it? Maybe 5-year-olds are really into playing doctor and checking out each other's privates and that sort of thing. But when you're talking about like the usual way babies are made and you say the whole deal, penis, vagina, blah, 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 there is a chance that they might try it. But as part of that conversation, you're going to say, this is not something kids do. Their hearts, their minds, their bodies are definitely not ready for something like this. And that's usually enough. They may try like play at making babies as part of a game, like if they're playing families, but usually if they do, it might be just like one kid on top of the other and then they're making a baby. But from what I've heard anecdotally, this doesn't encourage them to engage in any kind, it's called sex play technically. It doesn't encourage them to play in any sex play any more than they would normally. And it's better to err on the side of caution. And when kids do engage in this kind of playing doctor behavior, it usually it doesn't look adult-like. It doesn't feel like adult sexuality. It just looks like playing a game, which is what's happening in their heads. So yeah, so I hope that answers that question. Thank you. Anything else? And again, you can unmute if you want. Communicate with a co-parent. I'm just scrolling back too. Thank you. All right, I think we're about there. Anything to finish up? Anything I missed? Anything that needs clarifying? Okay, should we call it a day, night, afternoon? Oh, 3 questions, look at that, hello. All right, thank you. Thanks for coming. So 370 something of you signed up, and I don't know where we were at the top. 45 showed up. So I don't know if this is a good time, if there is a good time. Oh, thanks, Richard. Glad you enjoyed the swears. Thank you so much. It was really great to have you all here. Thanks for spending part of your off time with me. Remember, just pick one simple thing to do, just a little tiny thing, like wait till you get the email, go look at a resource. Thanks so much. All right, I'll see you all later. You know where I am if you need me.